Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you this morning. On this Sunday morning class, we are in a study of the Gospel of Luke. And just really getting started, we're still in chapter 1, but a couple of really significant things have already been announced in chapter 1 of Luke. The birth of John the Baptist was announced, and then the birth of Jesus Christ was announced. I don't know whether you'd call it Bible trivia or not, but the angel Gabriel announced both of those births. We remember that when Mary was informed that she was going to be giving birth to the Savior, and it was told to her in chapter 1 of Luke, verse 36, "Behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath also conceived a child in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren." And then in verse 39, "Mary arose in those days and went into the hill country with haste into a city of Judah, and entered to the house of Zacharias and saluted Elizabeth." And we talked about that last week. So kind of an interesting takeaway. Tom was pointing this out to me last week, and I had really never thought about the connection. So Mary goes to see Elizabeth. Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant. Now skip down, and this is going to be a part of our reading today, but skip down to verse 56. "Mary abode with her about 3 months and returned to her own house." Well, 6 months and 3 months would make Elizabeth ready to give birth. Verse 57, "Now Elizabeth's full time came that she should be delivered, and she brought forth a son." I wonder about the chronology of that, whether Mary left just before the baby John was born, or maybe she was there when the baby John was born, but it would have been right in that time frame. I'm not sure you could tell from the way that's worded whether she left before or after the birth had occurred, but it would have been right in that time frame. All right. So, the birth of John the Baptist has been announced, the birth of Jesus has been announced. Mary goes to see Elizabeth, and we talked last week about the salutation that Elizabeth gave to Mary when she came. And so we're ready to continue our reading at verse 46. And this is referred to by commentators as Mary's song. And so this is just an expression of thanksgiving and rejoicing on the part of Mary due to all these things that have been announced to happen. She's pregnant, Elizabeth is pregnant, and so you might think, especially in the case of Mary, that this might be a thing to be dreaded or avoided. We talked about that. She's an unwed mother, so to speak. But she's rejoicing in these things. And that's what this is, beginning at verse 46. Let's just read. "Mary said, My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit hath rejoiced in God my Savior. For he hath regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. For behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed. For he that is mighty hath done to me great things, and holy is his name. And his mercy is on them that fear him from generation to generation. He has showed strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He hath put down the mighty from their seats and exalted them of low degree. He hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. He hath helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spake to our fathers, to Abraham, to his seed forever." And Mary abode with her about 3 months and returned to her own house. Okay. Again, like so much of this, it doesn't necessitate a whole lot of explanation. It is just a song of praise and rejoicing to God for his blessings. One of the things that I might personally need emphasized is that I should do that more. I should express praise and gratitude toward God for the blessings that he gives me in my life. And probably all of us could join in with that admission. We probably don't do that nearly enough. And the Bible certainly is full of those kinds of expressions. I think we could work to perfect that and be better at that than we probably typically are. When we read passages like this, it both instructs us as to how those praises could be worded, but also just motivates us that we ought to be more in that mode. She mentions that what's happening, verse 55, verse 54, he has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy as he spake to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his seed forever. And so Mary understands that this is fulfillment of prophecies. You know, the prophecy goes all the way back to Abraham. Abraham was promised, in thy seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed. We understand that that was the initial promise that the Messiah would come to Abraham's seed, descendants of Abraham. Mary is a descendant of Abraham. Joseph is a descendant of Abraham too. We talked about this last week. You know, Joseph really isn't in the lineage of Jesus technically, literally. Joseph was not a blood relative of Jesus. He was acknowledged as his father, just in, I suppose, in the legal sense. But but Joseph was in the lineage of Abraham and David. So was Mary in the lineage of Abraham and David. And so any way you want to track that, you come out to the same conclusion. Jesus was of Abraham's seed. But she sees this as fulfillment of promise. Now, I got to believe that likely Mary did not understand all the ramifications. You know, that Israel had been looking for a Messiah, a Savior, a deliverer. But almost universally among the Jews, it was believed this would be someone to restore the kingdom. The nation of Israel be reestablished, and the greatness of Israel under King David and Solomon will be renowned when this deliverer comes. That was the general anticipation. They knew the prophecies of a deliverer, a Messiah, a Savior. They knew the prophecies were in the Old Testament, but they didn't comprehend, I think, the real meaning of that. Tom?
We look at this time frame. The window of opportunity for that promise is continuing to shrink. Come 70 AD and the destruction of Jerusalem, you had the lineages that were just basically wiped out. From that time on, it was more difficult to trace who was going to be a descendant of David. People today still looking for the Messiah to come, but there's no way to show that he was of that lineage to fulfill the prophecies that we're talking about. So, so here when you have Mary come in, knowing who, that she was a descendant too, there's that concept that, well, that promise is coming to someone.
Yeah.
But how many people were in Israel that were a descendant of David right now? At this time, that's what, some 400?
Oh, no, about 1,000, a little over 1,000 years.
After David. So, there's a number of people out there, but we know when they came back from Babylon, there were certain that couldn't trace it, and they didn't receive inheritance for it.
Yeah. So. Well, the other thing too is we know that Daniel had prophesied that this kingdom of the Messiah would be established during the time of the Roman kings, and so that window was closing too. I mean, it would exist longer, but that still was a window in time where it had to happen within. That's kind of interesting. It's all completely off the topic, but our premillennial friends who think that Jesus is going to come back and establish his kingdom on earth and reign for 1,000 years,